The transport shuttle made a soft sound as it landed on the metal floor of station. The doors opened slowly, and cold air rushed inside. Park stood up from her seat, picked up her small bag, and walked toward the exit. She was the only passenger getting off at this stop. Outside, the Galactic Combat Academy stretched before her like a small city made of glass and steel. Towers reached up toward the stars. Training grounds spread across the station like dark fields. Ships flew overhead, carrying supplies and visitors from distant worlds. Had seen pictures of this place many times, but standing here now, she felt the weight of where she was. She was the first human ever accepted into this academy, the first one in 400 years of its existence. The registration hall was crowded with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some had scales, some had fur, some had so many arms that lost count. They all turned to look at her when she entered. A human, small, soft, no claws, no armor, no tail, just smooth skin and dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Walked to the registration desk without looking at anyone. A floating drone scanned her face and made a beeping sound. Name and, the drone said in a flat voice. Park Earth Sol System. The drone processed her information and printed a small card. Room assignment, Block 7, Room 42. Training begins tomorrow at first light. Do not be late. Took the card and turned to leave. Behind her, she heard laughter. It was a clicking, rattling sound that came from deep inside someone's chest. She looked over her shoulder. A massive creature stood there, watching her with 4 black eyes. He was over 2 meters tall, with gray skin that looked like stone, and 4 thick arms crossed over his chest. His mouth was full of sharp teeth, and his mandibles clicked together as he laughed. This is what the humans sent, he said to his companion, another creature of the same species. She looks like food, not a fighter. I could break her in half with 1 hand. His friend laughed too, maybe 2 hands to be safe. Did not respond. She simply turned and walked away, her footsteps quiet on the metal floor. The dormitory was in a tall building near the edge of the academy grounds. Found her room on the 4th floor. The door slid open when she pressed her card against the scanner, and she stepped inside. The room was small but clean. 2 beds, 2 desks, a window that looked out at the stars. On one of the beds sat a young woman with short black hair and a friendly face. She jumped up when entered. You must be my new roommate, she said in Korean, her words tumbling out fast. I work in logistics here. Supplies, schedules, that kind of thing. I've been here for 3 years. You're Park, right? The combat cadet. I heard about you. Everyone has heard about you. The first human in the academy. That's amazing. Also terrifying, but mostly amazing. Set her bag down on the empty bed. Nice to meet you. Sat back down, watching her with curious eyes. That's all, just nice to meet you. You're about to train with some of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Aren't you nervous, scared, even a little bit excited? Opened her bag and began to unpack. 3 sets of training clothes, a small towel, a photograph in a worn frame. She placed the photograph on her desk facing her bed. I don't have time to be scared, she said. Leaned forward to look at the photograph. It showed an old woman with gray hair and kind eyes, standing in front of a traditional Korean house. Who is that? My grandmother. She died last year. I'm sorry. Touched the frame gently. She was a fighter. She taught me everything I know. When I was little, she used to say that fear is just energy. You can let it freeze you, or you can use it to move faster. Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the others are going to make your life very hard here. The instructors are tough on everyone but the other cadets. They don't like outsiders, especially humans. They think we're weak. I know. The especially. Those big gray ones with 4 arms, they're the worst. Their whole culture is built around strength and dominance. They'll see you as an easy target. Finished unpacking and sat down on her bed. She looked at with calm, steady eyes. Let them. That night could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of the station's engines. Through the window, she could see 1,000 stars burning in the darkness. She thought about her grandmother, about the small training hall behind their house inn, about the countless hours spent learning to fall without getting hurt, to redirect force instead of meeting it head-on, to find the weakness in any opponent. Combat is not about being the strongest, her grandmother had told her once. It is about being the most patient, the most aware. A river does not fight the rock. It flows around it, and in time the rock is worn away. Closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be difficult. The next day would be harder, and every day after that would test her in ways she could not imagine. But she had not come here to be liked. She had not come here to make friends. She had not even come here to prove that humans were strong. She had come here because her grandmother had believed in her, because Earth needed warriors who could stand beside the other species of the galaxy, because someone had to be first, and she had decided that someone would be her. When sleep finally came, dreamed of water flowing over stones, patient and unstoppable, carving its path through the mountain one drop at a time. In the morning, she woke before the alarm. She dressed in her training clothes, tied back her hair, and looked at her grandmother's photograph one last time. "Watch me," she whispered. "I'll make you proud." Then she walked out the door, ready to face whatever the academy would throw at her. 3 days passed quickly at the academy. Spent her time learning the layout of the station, memorizing the training schedule, and watching the other cadets. She watched how they moved, how they talked, how they carried themselves. She watched which ones were arrogant and which ones were careful. She watched and she remembered. The cadet who had laughed at her on the first day was named. He was loud and proud, always surrounded by friends, always boasting about his strength. His 4 arms were thick with muscle, and his stone-gray skin was covered in old battle scars. He noticed watching him once and made a rude gesture with all 4 hands. "Still alive, little human," he called out. "Enjoy it while you can. Combat assessment is in 2 days. I hope they pair you with me. I'll try to leave enough pieces for your family to bury." Said nothing. She just turned and walked away, her face calm and empty. On the morning of the combat assessment, all 64 cadets gathered in the main training arena. It was a massive circular space, as big as a sports stadium, with high walls and a floor made of some material that absorbed impact. Observation platforms ringed the upper levels, where instructors and visitors could watch the fights below. But what caught everyone's attention were the weapons. Racks and racks of weapons lined every wall. Plasma rifles that could burn through steel, blades that hummed with deadly energy, graviton hammers that could crush bones with a single swing, neural whips that caused pain without leaving marks. Every weapon from every corner of the galaxy was represented here. The cadets whispered to each other, pointing at their favorites, already planning which ones they would choose. At the center of the arena stood Instructor. He was one of the reptilian species that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. His scales were dark green, almost black, and covered with scars from battles fought long before most of the cadets were born. His yellow eyes moved slowly across the crowd, missing nothing. His tail, thick and powerful, rested on the ground behind him like a sleeping snake. When he spoke, his voice filled the arena without any need for amplification. "Today begins your true training," said. "Everything before this was preparation. Everything after this will be pain. You will be tested. You will fail. You will bleed. Some of you will quit. Some of you will be sent home in medical pods. And maybe, if the void shows mercy, a few of you will become warriors." He gestured toward the weapon racks with one clawed hand. "Select your arms. The Academy provides only the finest tools of combat. Choose wisely. Your weapon will be your partner for the next 6 months. Treat it with respect and it will." Instructor. The arena went completely silent. Everyone turned to look at the source of the interruption. Had stepped forward from the crowd. Her hand was raised, her face expressionless. His yellow eyes narrowed, his tail twitched once. "Cadet Park, you have something to say." "A question, sir, about the rules." Whispers rippled through the cadets. No one interrupted Instructor, no one. They had been known to break bones for lesser offenses. But did not move. He simply stared at with those ancient, calculating eyes. "Ask your question." "The Academy Handbook, Section 7, Subsection 3, said, her voice clear and steady. "It states that personal weapons are forbidden on Academy grounds. The exact words are, no external arms shall be carried, stored, or utilized by cadets during their enrollment period." Is that rule still in effect? Scales shifted slightly, a sign of confusion in his species. That rule exists to prevent cadets from bringing unfair advantages from there. These weapons are provided by the Academy. They are different. With respect, sir, they are still external arms, tools of combat that come from outside the body. Paused, letting her words settle. If the purpose of the rule is to ensure fair assessment of a cadet's true combat ability, then shouldn't that assessment be conducted without any weapons at all? The arena erupted in noise. Cadets shouted in anger and disbelief, was laughing so hard that he had to hold his stomach with two of his hands. "She's insane," someone yelled. "She wants to fight us with her bare hands. This is suicide." Raised one claw and the arena fell silent again. He looked at for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, his mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "You wish to fight without weapons," he said, "against opponents who could tear you apart with their natural strength. I'm asking if the rules mean what they say, sir. And if I say yes, if I force everyone to fight without weapons because of your interpretation, then the assessment will test what we truly are," replied, "not what tools we can hold." Was silent for what felt like an eternity. His tail swayed slowly behind him. His yellow eyes never left his face. Then he turned to address the entire assembly. "Cadet Park has raised an interesting point," he announced. "The rules of this academy exist for reasons that many of you have forgotten. We do not train warriors to depend on weapons. We train warriors to be weapons." He paused. "Today's assessment will be conducted hand to hand. No arms, no tools, only what you were born with." The cadets stared in shock. Some looked angry, some looked terrified, though with their 4 powerful arms suddenly looked very confident. Pushed his way to the front of the crowd, all 4 hands clenched into fists. "Finally," he said, his mandibles clicking with anticipation, "a chance to show what real strength looks like." He looked directly at, his black eyes gleaming with hunger. "I'm going to enjoy this, little human. I'm going to enjoy this very much." Met his gaze without flinching. Her hands hung loose at her sides. Her breathing was slow and even. "We'll see," she said softly. And somewhere, watching from the observation platform above, pressed her hands against the glass and whispered a prayer to any god that might be listening. The fighting ring was a circle of light in the center of the arena. White lines marked its boundaries. Step outside the lines and you lose. Get knocked unconscious and you lose. Surrender and you lose. Those were the only rules. Stood on one side of the ring, stood on the other. The size difference was almost comical. Towered over her, his 4 arms spread wide, his stone-gray skin gleaming under the lights. Each of his hands was bigger than his head. His legs were thick as tree trunks, and his chest was a wall of muscle and natural armor. Looked like a child standing before a monster. The other cadets had gathered around the ring, pushing and shoving to get a better view. Most of them were smiling. They expected this to be quick. They expected blood. "Any last words, little human?" asked, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Maybe a prayer to whatever gods your species believes in." Did not answer. She simply settled into a stance that none of them had ever seen before. Her knees were bent, her weight low and centered. Her hands were open, not closed into fists, held loosely in front of her chest. Her eyes were fixed on a point somewhere past shoulder, not directly at him. She looked relaxed, almost sleepy. Instructor stepped to the edge of the ring. His tail rose and then slammed down against the floor with a sound like thunder. "Begin!" Charged. He was fast for his size, much faster than his heavy body suggested. All four arms reached for at once, too high to grab her shoulders and head, too low to sweep her legs out from under her. It was a classic attack pattern, designed to overwhelm smaller opponents through sheer numbers. No creature with only two arms could defend against four simultaneous attacks. But when his hands closed, they closed on empty air. Had moved, not backward where he expected her to go, but sideways and forward, slipping past his reaching arms like water flowing around a rock. Her left hand touched his upper right arm as it passed, just a gentle push, but it was enough to redirect his momentum. His own strength worked against him, pulling him off balance. At the same moment, her foot hooked behind his front ankle. Not a kick, not a sweep, just a small hook applied at exactly the right time. Stumbled, his arms windmilled, trying to recover. For one terrible moment, he was completely exposed, all his attention focused on not falling. His palm shot forward. It was not a punch. It was an open-handed strike, her fingers pressed together, aimed at a spot on the back of his neck where the thick plates of his natural armor did not quite meet. The gap was barely a centimeter wide. She found it anyway. The sound was soft, almost gentle, but his eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. The arena was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. They simply stared at the impossible scene before them. The strongest cadet in their year lay unconscious on the floor and stood over him, her breathing slow and even, her hands still held loosely at her sides. She had not even broken a sweat. Instructor walked to the center of the ring. He looked down at, then up at, something flickered in his yellow eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. "Winner, Cadet Park." He turned to the medical team. "Remove him." As the drones carried away, returned to her starting position. She looked out at the crowd of cadets, her face calm and empty. "Next," she said. What followed was unlike anything the Academy had ever witnessed. One by one, cadets entered the ring to face her. All 8 limbs and lightning-fast reflexes, who found herself tangled in her own arms and thrown to the ground before she could land a single blow. A male, young and arrogant, who tried to use his tail as a weapon and ended up with it locked in a hold that made him scream in pain until he surrendered. 2 more, both larger than, both defeated in less than a minute. Did not punch, she did not kick, she did not use strength against strength. Instead, she flowed. She redirected. She found the weak points in every species, the joints that bent the wrong way, the nerve clusters that caused pain, the balance points that could be exploited. She used their own force against them. The harder they attacked, the faster they fell. After the 11th victory, Instructor called a halt. "Enough," he said. His voice was strange, almost soft. "The assessment is complete." The cadets stared at with new eyes. The mockery was gone. The contempt was gone. In its place was something else. Fear, perhaps, or wonder, or both. Walked out of the ring without looking at any of them. Her face was still calm, still empty. But inside, her heart was pounding, and her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "A river does not fight the rock. It flows around it." She had shown them. Now they would have to decide what it meant. That night alone in her room finally allowed herself to feel. Her hands were shaking. Her legs were weak. She had been terrified every second of every fight, terrified that she would make a mistake, that one of them would be too fast, too strong, too unpredictable. But she had not shown it. She had not let them see. Because that was the most important lesson her grandmother had ever taught her. Fear was energy, and energy could be used. She looked at the photograph on her desk. at those kind old eyes that had seen so much. "I did it," she whispered. "First step, many more to go." Outside her window, the stars burned cold and bright, indifferent to the small human who had just changed everything. The days after the combat assessment were strange. The other cadets no longer laughed at. They no longer made jokes about how weak humans were, how easy she would be to break. Instead, they watched her. They watched her eat in the dining hall. They watched her walk through the corridors. They watched her train alone in the practice rooms late at night. Some watched with fear, some watched with curiosity, and some, watched with something that might have been respect. They had woken up in the medical bay with a terrible headache and no memory of how he had gotten there. When the doctors told him what had happened, he did not believe them. When they showed him the recording, he watched it 17 times. Each time, his mandibles clicked slower and slower, until finally they stopped clicking altogether. "She didn't even hit me," he said at last. "Not really, she just touched me, and I fell." 3 days after the assessment, found in the meditation garden. She was sitting beneath an artificial waterfall, her eyes closed, her body perfectly still. He stood at the entrance for a long moment, uncertain what to do. Then he walked forward and sat down across from her. "I want to know how," he said. "How did you beat me? How did you beat all of us?" Opened her eyes. She looked at him without fear, without anger, without any emotion at all. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I don't understand." His 4 hands clenched into fists, then relaxed. "I am stronger than you, faster than you. I have 4 arms and you have 2. My skin can stop a blade. Yours can be cut by a fingernail. Everything about my species is designed for combat. Everything about yours is designed to be prey, but you defeated me like I was nothing." "You weren't nothing," said. "You were dangerous, very dangerous." "Then how?" Was quiet for a moment, listening to the sound of the artificial waterfall. Then she spoke. "Do you know anything about Earth, about human history?" Shook his head. "Only that your species is young, only that you have no natural weapons, only that the galaxy considers you insignificant." 200,000 years, said. "That's how long humans have existed, and for most of that time we had nothing. No claws, no armor, no strength. We were surrounded by animals that could kill us easily. Lions, bears, wolves, crocodiles. Any one of them could tear a human apart. So how did you survive?" "We learned," held up her hands, small and soft and seemingly harmless. "We learned that we couldn't win by being stronger, so we learned to be smarter. We studied how animals attacked. We studied how bodies moved. We learned where the weak points were, and then we practiced. For thousands and thousands of years we practiced." She stood up and walked to the center of the garden. "My grandmother taught me a style called Hapkido. It was created on Earth in a country called Korea many centuries ago. The basic idea is simple. Do not meet force with force. Instead, use your opponent's force against them. The harder they attack, the easier it is to redirect them." She moved her hands in slow, flowing patterns. "But Hapkido is just one style. Humans have created hundreds of fighting styles, thousands. Every culture on Earth developed its own way of combat, and over time, the best ideas from all of them began to mix together." Watched her move, his 4 eyes following every gesture. "You learned all of them." "No, no one could learn all of them, but I learned enough. I learned the principles. Every species has joints. Every species has nerves. Every species has a center of balance. If you understand these things, you can defeat any opponent. It doesn't matter how many arms they have." "But the gap," said, touching the back of his neck where she had struck him. "How did you know about the gap in my armor?" "I watched you for 3 days. I watched how you moved, how you turned your head, how your plates shifted when you bent over. I saw the gap. I remembered it, and when the moment came, I used it." Was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost humble. "Can you teach me?" Looked at him with surprise. "Teach you what?" What you know how to fight without depending on strength alone. He stood up, all four arms hanging at his sides. I thought I was strong. I thought strength was everything, but you showed me that I was wrong. I want to understand what I was missing. For the first time since she had arrived at the academy, smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real. Okay, she said, but it won't be easy. You'll have to forget everything you think you know about combat. You'll have to start from the beginning. I don't care, I want to learn. That night found them in the practice room, was showing how to fall without getting hurt, how to let his body roll with the impact instead of fighting against it. The massive crashed to the ground again and again, but each time he got up and tried again. Leaned against the doorway, watching with amazement. I never thought I'd see this, she said, a learning from a human. Help to his feet. He's learning faster than I expected. His species is very good at adapting. Made a sound that might have been laughter. She's being kind. I've fallen on my face 47 times tonight. 48 corrected, but you're getting better. Word spread through the academy. The human was teaching the impossible had become reality, and slowly other cadets began to appear at the practice room door. First one, then two, then a dozen. They came to watch, then they came to learn. And taught them all. The cadets who had arrived at the academy as strangers had become something else. They trained together, ate together, bled together. Old hatreds between species began to fade. The no longer looked down on the smaller races. The no longer kept to themselves. Even the proud cadets had learned to work with others. And at the center of it all was. She had never wanted to be a leader. She had never wanted attention or fame. But somehow, without trying, she had become the person that others looked to. When arguments broke out, they asked her to settle them. When training became too hard, they asked her for advice. When the nights felt too long and home felt too far away, they sat with her in the meditation garden and listened to her stories about Earth. Had become her closest friend among the aliens. The massive followed her everywhere, practicing his falls, working on his balance, learning to see combat as something more than just strength against strength. He still lost to her in every sparring match, but now he lasted longer, and he understood why he lost. Tomorrow is the final trial, said one evening, sitting within their shared room. Are you ready? Looked out the window at the stars, as ready as I can be. I've heard rumors about what Instructor is planning. They say he's changed the format because of you. Because of me. Because of the first assessment, because you made everyone fight without weapons, smiled. They say tomorrow's trial will be the same, no weapons for anyone. Was quiet for a moment. That will be interesting. Interesting? Some of the cadets are terrified. They've spent 6 months learning to fight with their hands instead of their tools, but a real battle, against combat drones, without any weapons at all, shook her head. Half of them think they're going to die. They won't die. The drones are programmed to stun, not kill. You know what I mean. Turned away from the window. Her eyes were calm, but something burned behind them. They've learned more than they realize. 6 months ago, they thought weapons made them warriors. Now they know the truth. The weapon is just a tool. The warrior is inside. The next morning, all 64 cadets gathered in the main arena for the final trial. But this time, the weapon racks were empty. This time, the walls were bare. Instructor stood at the center, his form as imposing as ever, but had learned to read his expressions over the past 6 months, and she saw something new in his yellow eyes, something that might have been pride. Today is your final trial, announced. You will face a combat scenario against overwhelming odds. Drones will attack from every direction. They are programmed to be ruthless. They will not stop until you are disabled or the timer runs out. He paused, letting his words sink in. In years past, cadets faced this trial with weapons, plasma rifles, blades, energy shields, but this year is different. His gaze swept across the assembly, lingering for a moment on. This year you face the trial as you are. No arms, no tools, only what you have learned." Murmurs rippled through the cadets. Some looked afraid, but others stood tall, their eyes steady, cracked his 4 knuckles and grinned. "Finally," he said, "a real challenge." The trial began. Drones poured into the arena from hidden doors in the walls. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They were fast and relentless, armed with stun batons and restraint fields. They attacked without mercy, overwhelming cadets through sheer numbers. In the first minute, 15 cadets fell. But the rest adapted. They formed groups, protecting each other's backs. They used techniques that had taught them, joint locks and throws and pressure points. They turned the drones' momentum against them, sending them crashing into walls and each other. Moved through the chaos like a ghost. She did not fight alone. She moved from group to group, helping fallen comrades back to their feet, creating openings for others to exploit. When a cadet was surrounded by 5 drones, appeared beside her and took down 3 of them in 2 seconds. When was pinned by a restraint field, she disabled the drone projecting it and pulled him free. "Together," she shouted, "stay together, protect each other." The cadets around her voice. They fought not as individuals but as a unit. Species that had been enemies for centuries now moved in perfect harmony, covering each other's weaknesses, amplifying each other's strengths. The timer counted down, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute. When the final alarm sounded, 12 cadets remained standing. 12 out of 64. But those 12 had survived against odds that should have been impossible. It was the highest survival rate in Academy history. The graduation ceremony was held 1 week later. Military observers from 9 different star systems had come to watch. They had heard the rumors about the human cadet. They wanted to see for themselves. Instructor presented the certificates personally. When he reached, he paused. "Cadet Park, you have received offers from the Imperial Guard, the Silent Fleet, and all of them have promised exceptional compensation and rank." He tilted his head. "You turned them all down. Why?" Looked out at the assembly, at who stood proudly with his certificate, at the end cadets she had trained, at watching from the observation platform with tears in her eyes. "I came here to prove something," said. "I proved it. Now I need to go home and share what I learned." "And what will you teach them?" Smiled. It was the same small smile she had given in the meditation garden 6 months ago. "I'll teach them what I taught everyone here, that humans don't need claws or armor or venom. We don't need 4 arms or 8 legs or tails that can crush bone." She held up her hands, small and soft and deadly. "We have something better. We have 200,000 years of learning how to survive when everything is trying to kill us." Nodded slowly. "And if the galaxy still calls your species weak?" Looked at her hands. The same hands that had defeated the strongest warriors from a dozen worlds. The same hands that had changed a 400-year-old institution. The same hands that her grandmother had trained so many years ago in a small house in. "Then the galaxy will learn," she said simply, "just like the Academy did." She accepted her certificate and walked off the stage. Fell into step beside her, along with a dozen other cadets who had become her friends. Together, they walked out of the arena, past the weapon racks that would never again define what made a warrior. Behind them, Instructor watched them go. And for the first time in his long and bloody life, the old felt something that might have been hope. The galaxy was changing, and it had started with a single human who had asked a simple question about the rules. Outside the Academy looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was home. She had a lot of work to do. But first, she took out her grandmother's photograph and held it up to the light of distant suns. "I did it," she whispered. "I made you proud." And somewhere across the vast emptiness of space, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice, warm and kind and full of love. "I always knew you would."